Welcome back. I just want to start with a quick question. So, what if I told you that one of the best employees in your business already is planning to exit your business and you're missing all of the warning signs? What if employee turnover isn't just a problem for people like me in HR, but it slows down growth, it damages culture, and in small businesses, perhaps like yourselves, it hits even harder. Today, what I want to do is dive into how you can spot who's about to leave, perhaps before they actually hand the notice in, and what you can do to actually stop that. That's what we're going to take forward now. Okay, so one of the things for me is hiring is actually quite an expensive function. It's actually something that's got a lot of hidden costs to it. And we estimate normally, and there's lots of figures around this, by the way, but normally it can cost up to 30K per recruitment cycle that you're going through. And that could be things like managerial costs and sitting in panels. It could be the advertising process you're going through. It could be a whole swathe of things that filter into all of those hidden costs that you have. So losing good people can be really expensive. It can even be more costly than what you maybe even think about. So it's not just about recruitment fees. It's about the time you lose. It's about the disruption to your team, to your business. It's about the knowledge perhaps that's exiting your organization, especially if it's someone's been there for quite a while, depending what level of role they're in as well. Could be just walking out of the door and taking all of that with them. So one of the things that is really important to me is categorizing a high performing culture. When you have high performing staff, it's hard to hold on to high performing staff because they tend to be the forgotten group of people in your business. The people that have the performance concerns, the disciplinary issues, the sickness absence issues, they tend to drain all of your time and energy, which means that the people who are the high performing people tend to not get that time and energy. And for the benefit of being high performers, they tend to inherit the work that the low performers aren't currently completing. So what you tend to find is those that are high performers will leave because they're not happy getting the work from other people that can't perform to a standard that they can. And they will look for another organization that not only can they fit into where other people of the similar ilk to them, but perhaps where they'll get that attention, recognition, career development, and all those other bits and pieces. So you need to be able to see those signs because those are the people you don't want to lose in your business because that's massive, massive in terms of a cost implication, and it's magnified the smaller a business you're in. So big companies like Credit Suisse are already using data, which is really important to get light speed ahead of other people and other businesses in this area, and they're already saving millions. So what if we can take some of the bits and pieces that they're doing, but we don't have the kind of budget of Credit Suisse? You've got this big organization with all this money to throw behind it. Well, the good news is you don't actually need to be this huge corporate giant vehicle to spot these warning signs. In fact, I would actually hazard a guess that the answers are probably already glaringly obvious in your business and in your face. You just need to know where to look for them and how to find them, but they're probably already there. So here are four mini ways that I want to go through. And by the way, now's a good point to stop to say that this is a podcast. If you're listening to the podcast or you're watching the podcast, then thank you very much. That's massively helpful. If you'd like to get articles like this, and if you are reading the article have these bits in below. Then again, all you need to do is click on the link in the description, and you can get these other little friendly tidbits and promotional bits at an earlier time as well to you and to be available to help and support you in your business. Now, the four mini sections that I want to get started on that are really helpful are things that some of you may or may not to one degree or another be doing, but it's actually taking and extracting some of the data from these things rather than just doing them. And if you're not familiar with us, or if you are as well, everything I want to do and we want to build upon is based upon data-led decisions. We want to get data on our workforce to help to make more informed strategic decisions within our organizations. And this forms part of that process. And no, it doesn't have to break the bank. And no, you don't have to be a big corporate vehicle to have this in place. So the first one is looking at exit interviews and feedback. Now, exit interviews sometimes are not done effectively. Sometimes they're not done at all. Sometimes they're missed because people don't want to do an exit interview with their line manager, especially if it is that they have concerns and feedback that's going to be concerning to that line manager. But one thing I love about exit interviews is it really helps to let people cite some of those issues and let some of that stuff off their shoulders, um, because they're probably more free to do so because they're leaving the organization. It also works in another way that people are more free to say stuff out of spite that might not even be true because they're leaving the organization. But if three people left, for example, citing the same issue, we put it into that kind of category, it's probably by that point in time, the law of averages, not a coincidence. I would call that more of a pattern. And therefore, you can start to familiarize yourselves that there is something happening there. So it's leading already onto the fact of not just doing exit interviews and collecting that feedback and going through those processes, is actually collating the data that that exit interview is actually telling you in all of those cases, and thinking about it and measuring and considering. It's what we call the 3 M's, which is where you monitor, measure, and you manage what those reactions are going to be coming back from those points. The second one is engagement trends. So this is more of a pickup. So when you're suddenly at meetings and these people that would normally be quite talkative, quite interactive within those processes are getting quite quiet, they're missing deadlines, they're not as in tune to what's happening at the moment in time, it's often silence, intervening periods. Sometimes that silence can be the loudest warning sign, by the way, just to take that into perspective. But as a manager managing that person, if you can start to see these behaviors are out of character for that person, it could mean a multitude of things that are happening within that person's life at that moment in time, which probably gives rise to welfare kind of check-ins and support in any case and scenario. But like I always try to gear into the Inspector Clouseau kind of scenario, which is trying to delve in and get more information, trying to get better understanding of what that circumstance is, as well as also having the care and consideration of what you can do to help and support that person, whatever the outcome of that may be. The third one is really looking at promotion and pay history. So again, this is very familiar within small businesses that we get people in and we don't have good career pathways. I'll come on to that in a minute in time. But people come in and they stay stagnant. And you're just looking at the next person and the next, project or thing you're focusing on to work on. And these things get forgotten. Sometimes there just isn't the finances to be able to do it either. That's the other part to play in this. Or perhaps you don't have the finance for those bonuses you used to do, or something on those sort of lines. So how else do you go around achieving the same goals here? But if someone's gone years without any progress, either in their career or within their pay, then there's a strong possibility that for that person to get that progress, they've probably already come to the realization that they're going to have to look external to the organization to get that. And they may already be interviewing elsewhere for those processes. That's just the way that will be. And the last one I want to look at is about manager check-in. So I alluded to this a minute ago in terms of when people go silent and, people acting outside of character. It is very easy to miss a one-to-one. It's very easy for managers, especially if you're managing large teams in a small business, to feel kind of put off, or that this just is not in scope to be able to have a one-to-one regularly with someone every month of all my staff, if you've got that many people to do it with. But people rarely resign and quit overnight. I mean, there's things that happen, sure, that occurs, but it's rare. It's normally a build-up of things. It's normally a pattern of events. It's almost a sequence of things that would unfold that get that person to get to that stage. But when you stop that checking in, when you take away that facility and that process, then you're no longer getting that Inspector Clouseau mode. You're no longer at the touch point of what's happening in that person's life at work, in life in general, and how they're performing, how are their workflows, all those different bits and pieces. It's very hard to have the oversight, as much as you may be able to see it because you're managing it and you're seeing it on a monthly basis. But from that person's perspective, you may lack that. So making sure you're having those regular check-ins and making sure you're having them regularly is really, really important and fundamental. So these are the things we really want to focus on next. That is trying to be the antithesis to what I just described a minute ago, and that is having retention conversations. This is just a general conversation, being a human being and asking what's going on before it's too late. So picking up on those moments of silence, picking up on those behaviors that are outside of character, And in those one-to-ones, having the one-to-one and actually having those conversations. We always want to focus on a one-to-one of not just being a counseling session, but you can't eradicate that counseling process from a one-to-one. We want to focus on measuring, managing and monitoring what people are actually doing and their levels of output and productivity. Sure, we want data on that too. Yes. We want to see what workloads are. Absolutely. But you also need to check on the welfare of the individual too. We are dealing with humans and it's not robotic. So we do need to have that in there. So that's the first element I probably look to focus on. The second one, which I alluded to earlier on, is career pathways. So, career development, having a structure, a roadmap of where people can go within the organization. I realize within smaller businesses, this is always quite hard to do. With a corporate organization, there can be lots of different, branches to the tree that people can fly off to. Whereas within a small organization, there's only so far and so many places people can go. It's not a bigger thing. But what we want to be doing is working on how we can identify when someone comes in at a lower level, whatever level that is into your organization, what's the natural stepping stones to the next progression to the next place. If you don't have that progression in your organization, I mean, sure, there will be an endpoint to that. In every business, there will be. But if you don't have that natural progression, people are forced to go and find that progression elsewhere, which means outside of your business. So if you spend a lot of time, energy, resource, training, money in supporting somebody to grow within your business, and then there's nowhere for them to go, then you're investing all that money for them to go elsewhere. That's the simple fact of that. Workload balance is the next one. Again, interrelates back into that touch point, that mechanism with managers and staff to evaluate when you're getting data back about how someone is performing, their productivity, their output, rather than just saying you're not hitting the targets. We also want to ask the question of why. Why is that happening? Is that a legitimate performance concern? Is it related to external factors? Or is it that we're just expecting too much from that role? It could well be that. And a lot of people who, especially like I said at the very beginning, your highest performing, your high performing golden stars, the people that you want lots of them. If you could multiply them in your business, you just think my business is going to be solved overnight. They get overlooked. The attention goes elsewhere. And for the process of doing so well and performing so well in their particular role, what is the bonus they really truly get? More work. So if you take someone who is the shining star that you want, you are actively breaking them if you're taking them to the point of burnout. And you've got to be aware of that. And again, that's got to come back to those meetings, checking the data and analyzing the work that you're asking somebody to do. And if it is reasonable and practical for someone to do that, a lot of people will say yes to these things because they feel obliged to say yes, even though realistically, internally, they're screaming no, and they'll still try and do it and will burn out. And that's not always on them. That is a lot of the time on you as managers to identify that. If you're pushing people to that point in place, it's no surprise they'll want to look elsewhere to get employment. And recognition. Recognition in general doesn't have to be something that's really huge and costly. It doesn't have to be that you're rewarding them all the time. For the best performing person gets a holiday abroad that's bought and paid for. Not everyone can do that. Not every organization can support that. But there are lots of other things that are cheaper that mean an awful lot to people that actually also gives that recognition reward. The one that I always use, so if you speak to me in these meetings, you'll know that I'll bring up the annual leave one. It's cost neutral. To increase for a high performing person an extra day's worth of annual leave. People want more annual leave. That's a good thing for people. And it also creates the FOMO effect, where other colleagues in the business can see that Johnny got an extra day's annual leave. Well, why did Johnny get that? How do I get a slice of that? That's the question a manager wants an employee coming and asking them, because the answer is great. It's to then perform to a higher standard and level, just like Johnny did. And that's great for us in terms of output and the success of our business. But recognition in all sorts of different forms is a hugely powerful tool to help people feel engaged. The worst mentality you can have as an employer is, I pay them a salary, surely that's enough. It's not. We're not robots. Recognition and reward is a good thing. Think about it. So As we start to come to a close on this particular part, I just want to have a look at, rehashing some of these things we've spoken about. And again, is within the article, you can read in that below. In a small business, every team member, I mean, it's magnified in a small business. There's nowhere to hide in a small business. But every team member counts. The work they're doing counts. It makes a difference. That's why you're spending the money to employ somebody to get that function done. Losing one great member is so painful. It's so monumentally a difficult scenario to face. If you have a really great member of staff and they leave, it's magnified. It absolutely is. And it hurts more than you probably think if you haven't gone through that right now already. The signs are always there. You don't need a massive budget like Credit Suisse to identify if someone's about to leave, or if you think they're at that tipping point that they might be considering it or even going to interviews right now. The signs are there. You just need to observe them. You need to manage them, you need to measure them, and you need to monitor what is happening. And you need to utilize the tools that you already have to your grasp to be able to focus on that and get to that point in place to identify these things. And if you're unsure where to start, or you need help and you're thinking it's all based on data, how do I get data on people? This is one of the hardest things to do, and it is quantifying what I do in HR and people and output is a difficult thing. It is not straightforward and simple. If you are looking at that and you need help building a retention strategy or seeing what works, that's what we're here for. So please come forward, talk to us, let us know, contact us. Again, you can book a meeting. Link is in the descriptions below for those of you that are in the podcast, that are watching the podcast. For those of you that are in the article, just use the link below, click on there, book up a meeting, and we start to look at that straight away. I just want to say thank you very much. If you found any of this to be helpful whatsoever, and again, you are listening to this on the podcast, please subscribe, please give us a thumbs up and give us a like. Every little bit helps. And again, all the links are below so that you can also get early access to the information that we're providing out, more information as well in terms of the articles and our guides that we're providing too as well. So please click on that link and I'll speak to you soon.